The Supreme Court en banc on Thursday says Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno's indefinite leave was a consensus of all the justices present during the session last Tuesday. A joint statement signed by all 13 justices, except Sereno and Associate Justice Benjamin Kagiwa, who was on leave, says it was Sereno herself who said she was taking an indefinite leave. The SC en banc also says Sereno did not request the rescheduling of her wellness leave. This after Sereno's spokesperson said it was the Chief Justice's personal decision to avail of her wellness leave earlier than scheduled. The 13 justices say they regret the confusion that the announcements and media releases of the spokespersons of the Chief Justice has caused, which seriously damaged the integrity of the judiciary in general and the Supreme Court in particular. They add, quote, "In the ordinary course of events, the court expected the Chief Justice to cause the announcement of only what was really agreed upon without any modification or embellishment. This matter shall be dealt with in a separate proceeding." Sereno, in response, apologizes for the confusion. She says, quote, "It is unfortunate that my plan of making use of an already approved wellness leave in relation to an indefinite leave was inaccurately conveyed, for which I apologize." Sereno adds, quote, "I had agreed to go on an indefinite leave, but I am also bound by the appropriate administrative rules." Rappler refutes presidential spokesperson Harry Roque's claim that Omidyar Network's donation of Philippine depositary receipts is an admission that the social news network violated the Constitution. Omidyar earlier made the donation to Rappler's 14 managers after the Securities and Exchange Commission revoked the social news network's registration based on a provision of the PDR it thought gives control of the company to foreigners. The news agency says, quote, "Rappler has maintained that the government-recognized Philippine depositary receipts it issued to Omidyar did not go against the constitutional requirement of Filipino ownership of media entities." Roque says Omidyar's donation proves Rappler violated the constitutional provisions on foreign ownership of media companies. He says, quote, "That's an admission and we're happy they admitted, because now we can say that even Rappler now admits they're not victims of censorship, they're not victims of infringement of press freedom." In an interview with local and foreign journalists Wednesday, Omidyar Network partner Stephen King said the move takes away the rationale being used by the SEC to silence independent journalism. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque defends President Rodrigo Duterte's use of the word co-ownership when describing joint exploration with China in the West Philippine Sea. Roque says Duterte only used the term to simplify the concept of joint exploration. He says, quote, "What he meant was, that's exactly the kind of relationship we will have in a joint exploration and exploitation." Roque says any agreement for joint exploration to be entered into by the Duterte administration does not mean the government is ceding sovereign rights over the West Philippine Sea to Beijing. He says, quote, "The existing jurisprudence is yes, we can enter into joint exploration and joint exploitation with foreign entities, provided that it complies with the Constitution, among others, it be pursuant to a written agreement signed by the President and submitted to Congress." Roque calls joint exploration a practical solution that allows Filipinos to utilize natural resources without having to deal with the contentious conflicting claims to territories. He adds, no state can own the West Philippine Sea. Roque says, quote, "It can't be co-ownership in the sense that ownership is not material to the exclusive economic zone. It's only sovereign rights. There's no ownership in sovereign rights. But China is already exercising sovereign rights over parts of the West Philippine Sea by building artificial islands." Roque earlier said the right to build artificial islands is a sovereign right. The Transportation Department says the MRT3 now averages 8 to 9 operational trains this week, after it opened the week of February 19 without functioning trains. The DOTr says the MRT did not suffer from glitches for 7 days, since the last breakdown last week. Prior to this, the MRT3 suffered an almost daily breakdown since the beginning of 2018. Transportation Secretary Artogade attributes this to the availability of spare parts which were recently delivered. Togade says the public should expect 15 working trains after the MRT3 management conducts a full rehabilitation of its trains from March 28 to 31. He adds the government cannot rush the use of the 48 trains acquired from China-based CRRC Dalian Company Limited, as this would depend on the audit being conducted on the trains. The assessment will come out on March 10. Human rights groups slam Foreign Secretary Alan Cayetano for again defending President Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs before the United Nations Human Rights Council. Last Tuesday, Cayetano urged countries to scrutinize in an impartial way the Duterte administration's war on drugs. He said human rights become a human wrong when politicized and weaponized. Human Rights Watch Asia Division's Carlos Conde says the Philippine government should stop depicting itself as the victim. Conde says, quote, Cayetano's claim is totally without basis and serves only to frustrate the calls by many for accountability for the Duterte administration's atrocities related to the so-called war on drugs. He adds the Philippine government needs to answer for the thousands killed in the war on drugs. The In Defense of Human Rights and Dignity movement, or iDefend, meanwhile says Cayetano's continuous defense of the drug war leads to more evidence that it is officially sanctioned by the state.